Well, that thing works out pretty well. Welcome out, gang. How's everyone doing today? Afternoon. Yeah, I like it. There we go. Excellent. My name's Ken and Moini. That's our little intro video. We hired Michael Bay's son to make it. There's some, think about like all the Transformers sound effects mashed together, and then boom, you got that. Just playing along in the back of your head, it'll work. I'm the lead solution architect at Fierce Software. Today I'm going to talk to you about automating and security. We specialize in security, secure platforms namely, DevOps, data analytics. A lot of our customers are in the public sector. We deal directly with system integrators, so your Lockheeds and GAs and so on and so forth. Get to put a lot of these logos together and do some really cool things. We've got, outside of our activities as a value-added reseller, we put on workshops, webinars, training offerings. We can deploy on-site, coast to coast. We were in San Diego not too long ago doing a 3-day little DevSecOps Containers 101 bit. Pretty cool stuff. So holler at us. You got our social little bits down there as well. So today I'm going to talk about automation. Just set a little baseline, right? Most people are doing automation now. That's good stuff. Then we're going to talk about Ansible, our favorite little horse in the race as far as automation goes, how it applies for security. We'll talk a little bit of red team, a little blue team, a little security operations team as well. Then one of my favorite things, part of my job, is to mash these things together for our customers and make solutions that are cohesive and that solve real problems. And we'll talk about a couple of those certification and compliance issues that some of our customers do have. And then, at the end of it, I'll take you to the stars and beyond with a crazy system where we're going to take containers and then deploy infrastructure platforms in order to run more containers in a secure manner in different environments. And I'm talking about edge clouds on the back of Humvees, right? Some pretty cool stuff. All right, so let's kick things off with automation, right? Everyone is doing automation, and now it has that bad rap of, the robots are going to come take our jobs, and no one's going to have anything going on, right? No, well, automation in IT is actually kind of a good thing, right? Because I can't tell you the number of times I've set up an Apache server. I can't tell you the number of times I'd like to continue setting up Apache servers, right? There's definitely going to be a time, but I'd like to not do it again. So this is actually just a process to take this repetition out. And we've been doing this for a while, right? This is nothing new. Who's got some bash scripts? Okay? Maybe Python, a little Perl here and there, right? Now, we've been doing this automation thing, but you've been doing your automation your way. I've been doing it my way. You've been doing it in a completely different way that I haven't even heard of yet, right? And so we have the silo issue. The silo issue, if you're trying to take automation across your entire enterprise, you run into issues to where I can program Python, I'm not the best, right? So there's a little skill gap. And on top of that, my scripts will work in my environment, but they might not work in yours. Even though they might be solving the same sort of issues, because guess what? A server in the cloud is very similar to one on-premise, right? Different environment. We're going to administer a lot of the bits in a similar way. So we're solving the similar problems, but our pace of innovation between our team is differing. Now we're seeing a lot of our customers go, hey, my network team is holding things up. We can't provision network access fast enough. Because now these container guys and gals are doing automation and all this other fun stuff, and how do we automate our network? With Ansible. It's pretty cool stuff. So how do you go from network to servers to applications to IoT devices? It has to be simple, right? I can't just say, okay guys, we're all going to learn Python. All right, y'all, we're all going to do a bash workshop. It's not a really cohesive way to move along automation, right? Well, that's where Ansible comes in. Now, the most active project out on GitHub, as far as an automation platform goes, that's between the top 3, Chef, Puppet, Ansible. It's used more widely now as well. And the couple of reasons for that is because it is bleedingly simple. You can read it from top to bottom and gives you perfect description of what you're going to do, and it's very verbose, and we'll see a little bit of that here in another moment. You can use it for servers, application deployment, infrastructure provisioning, IoT devices, all sorts. Network endpoints, switches, this, that, and the other. And one of the best parts in the way it can actually access a lot of these different use cases is because it's agentless. There's nothing to install. It operates over SSH or WinRM for Windows machines. Or maybe your network CLI or API, it actually natively can use them as well, right? Speaking of Windows, it is cross-platform. So you get to use Unix, Linux, Mac, OS, and this is all kind of more or less the same thing. Windows as well, and again, all these other devices that run maybe contemporary operating systems. And again, it's very verbose. You can go from top to bottom, and I can pass it off to you. You might be a little bit more into the QA side. You might be a little bit more into the network security side, and you're on the server administration team. But guess what? We're all able to understand the same thing without having to realize, oh, this squiggly bracket actually means that it's in this different child parameter. All those fun little intrinsic bits, right? And since it is just text files, we can load it into Git, we can track it, we can pull inventories in from different places, be our cloud platforms, our containers, and generate that on demand. And of course, it's got different integrations, different modules. If you don't find a module, you can build it yourself. It's made out of Python for the most part, a couple other languages if you'd like, go to, here, there, and everywhere. But you can integrate to Splunk, you can integrate to Slack, you can do all sorts of different things, right? Yes, every time you run a job, you can get another message in your Slack channel. Who doesn't want that, right? All right, so how simple could this actually be? I've been saying it's very simple. Apache web servers. Again, my favorite thing, Nginxes. The playbook is named install and start Apache, right? Pretty simple. We're going to target all of our hosts. We've got a couple variables, switching out some ports, the max clients. We're going to set a remote user. You don't have to use root, by the way. There are a bunch of different authentication methods. Tasks, our first task in this, if we're going to install and start Apache, we need to install it. We're going to use the yum module, targeting the HTTP package, and ensuring it's the latest version installed. Now, if you run this again, what will happen is it'll also make sure that the latest version is installed. That means I can run this to update it 2 weeks later. And then the second task, we're going to write some configuration. We're using a template module that takes those variables and puts them in very simply. And then we're going to use a service module, start it, and make sure it's enabled as well. Now, I hate reading off of slides, but I basically just read off of that slide, right? Pretty neat. And at this point, you're thinking like, wow, that is very simple. All right, so now we go into Ansible for security. If you're not familiar with Ansible itself, normally there is a control node where you download the Ansible engine and you operate from there, right? So I'm running playbooks or CLI commands from my laptop, for instance. That's not the most ideal way to use automation in a secure context, and that's kind of where Ansible Tower comes in, right? Ansible Tower is going to give you that goodness to where you can connect it to LDAP and then give specific groups and users specific accesses to different hosts and different inventories and secrets associated with it. That means I don't have to give you keys, I don't have to give you credentials, and I see everything that is going on, right? It's centralized, so I don't have developers running Ansible. Shoot, if I'm properly administering this, I shouldn't give them the ability to install Ansible on their laptops anyway, right? So it's got a view of everything that's going on. From top level, you can fine-tune the depth of your reports to see what your users are doing and where. And then if you want to, Ansible is primarily set up as a push architecture instead of a pull architecture, which is really nice because at that point I have no way of disabling the pull on the node end. So from a security standpoint, I can schedule maybe some recurring jobs to ensure configuration and applications are set in a specific manner, right? And again, we have APIs with Tower. So that integration is even deeper. We don't have to rely on Ansible modules for these integrations. You can just ping the API endpoints, JSON-based, very easy, right? You can get really crazy with it. I had it connected to an Amazon Alexa where I had it shooting off Lambda functions in AWS to control a network core and restart it, all from your voice. right? So that API can be very powerful. Now, real quick, just because I like the little devious sides of Ansible, you can't talk about blue team without talking about red team, right? Red teamers, you'll love it because you won't really fly high on any sort of network radars, right? We're running over SSH, and other transport agents that your other administrators you're trying to attack might already be using. So it's kind of incognito with that. All those fun little Metasploit modules that you've got written in Python and all this other goodness, it can translate very easily. We can take those modules that we're taking, create payloads dynamically, we can create different inventories dynamically, and then enact additional plays against those inventories, be it Cisco, F5, so on and so forth, right? Which means that you could do all sorts of different things. You can do server attacks, you can do network attacks, you can do self-propagating IoT attacks. That's right, you can provision Mirai with Ansible very easily, terrifyingly easily, in fact, and a lot more, right? So just a little touch on the devious side, but this is a security convention. Let's talk about the good guys and gals trying to protect our borders and seal our harbors, right? Again, you don't need a tool for Windows and you don't need a tool for Linux, which guess what? That means that I don't have to know PowerShell, all right? I don't have to know Bash. Really nice right there. Which means I can mandate compliance and policy across the enterprise, again, cross-platform, right? And since we're able to push out this configuration, since we're able to push out these mandates and policies, we're ensuring that no one is disabling the pulling function. There are other automation platforms that have an agent sitting on your nodes that pulls configuration in, which is very useful. But you can also disable that pulling function very easily. And then you have no real introspection into that state. Not only can you automate and push out, though, you can respond faster, and there's also some automatic remediation effects that you can use with Ansible. We'll show you in a moment. And then it's not just actions and automatic remediation and also automation fun for compliance. You also get to pull in these reports, nice color-coded charts and all this other fun stuff. So guess what? Your security team is finally off your back, right? Here are all your assets. Here are all your artifacts about everything. Just take it out of here. One of those scans is OpenSCAP. All right, has anyone used OpenSCAP out of curiosity? All right, so we've actually got a couple of popping some SCAPs in some software. I like it. All right, SCAP, for those of you who are not too familiar, you come with a couple different sort of security profiles for different sort of platforms. In this instance, we're going to select RHEL 7, our enterprise Linux from Red Hat, something all of our customers use. Can't really get around it, especially if you need something compliant and supported. So this is a cool little feature. Oh, wait, no, it's not working. All right. So we are going to not a lot of zooming. Here we've selected the RHEL 7 SCAP profile. We're also going to select a sub-profile. This one is the 800.171 specification. There are a bunch of different profiles from PCI DSS, HIPAA, 853. 800.171 is what a lot of our customers right now are dealing with, right? Something new, something very exciting. You can target your local machine or remote machine. You can also generate remediation roles in Ansible playbooks for these profiles. We can do the automatic remediation, or we can just do a little quick scan. Now in this, there are 357 different controls and policies. That's a lot to go through, right? So this is a very useful tool to kind of check off a lot of those quick hits. Do you have passwords changing every 30 days? Do you have your different mounts with no exec and so on and so forth, right? But all those things that you can't forget. So we run it initially, and we get, that dopamine drip. Green, okay, great. But then we get the red. Oh, what's up with that? This isn't really useful here, right? This is a little application on a desktop. What you can do with this, though, is export it to HTML and other formats. But with HTML, you get this pretty, again, color-coded chart. It's way, way long. It's 1.5 MB usually for an HTML page, right? So a very long document citing all those rules and profiles and specifications. Now we see a green bar and we see a much longer red bar and a yellow bar, and these are not the bars that we want to hang out right? Let's try to do a little better. So one of the things that Ansible can do is automatically remediate a lot of those steps. Hey, that's a lot nicer. Big old green bar. Now we've got up to 92% from 64. All right, we're done, right? That's it. We checked the boxes and boom. I don't know about y'all, but a 92 is a 92. That's an A, isn't it? We passed. It's been a while since I've been in school. But that's actually not how it works, right? Because those few specifications that failed are related to a bunch of other things that you can't really automate, that need a little bit more of a hands-on process, right? And that's where you get into the host space intrusion detection. That's where you get into anti-everything. That's where you get into the federation of that data, the shipping of that data, those events and so on, and then a lot of other things, right? There are 357 different profiles, or rather specifications in that one profile, and you still don't have enough, right? So we can't just use a couple tools and just say, hey, we're done. And that is where you get into Atomicorp OSSEC, or OSSEC. I don't know. I say OSSEC, but I put that up there anyway just to confuse people. We're going to make it happen. So Atomicorp, if you haven't learned so far, if you don't know about them and all this other fun stuff and why we're here, they are why we're here because the OSSEC projects. They help take the community project, they foster a little innovation behind it, they put a little extra man hours behind it, and they also help produce a commercial supported project, or product rather, right? So if you need something supported in your environment, that's how you go from a project to product. And on top of that, you heard a little earlier about additional capabilities that they help drive with that new ML functions and a couple other little bits that sit on top of Community OSSEC. So with that, you've got some of the Atomicorp Enterprise OSSEC goodness caked in the middle, additional FIM support, additional HIDS integration, all these other fun bits that Atomicorp help produce, right? So some of the reasons I like them, or some reasons I like them, we like them, is that it checks a lot of boxes, right? If you've used OSSEC before, security blanket, again, knocks out a lot of what we need to do. Everything that you set up is presented as a file. Very Linuxy, right? Smart. That's smart. It's automation friendly, because again, it integrates with a bunch of other things, and it's very, very simple. It's very powerful, but it's very simple. Now, if you've followed me along so far, you kind of already know where I'm going with this, right? We're going to mash these things together. All right, so now we are going to fuse some award-winning enterprise software, okay? If you're unfamiliar with how Atomicorp kind of works, there's a hub in the middle, right? This is where you're interacting with your web UI, CLI, all this other fun stuff. Then you've got your different nodes with agents shipping off events, information, actions back and forth. It's great stuff. Now, you could treat this like Splunk and just dump everything into that one hub, but what's also really great about these hubs is that you can have them act as relays or put them into different environments and then have them connect back together in different ways. So it's almost a federated instance there too, right? Now with Ansible, a couple of things come to mind with Atomicorp. Well, let's deploy these agents, right? They're both cross-platform on everything. Great, we can do that very easily. Now, since it's all operated as a file, they're all both operated as file-based platforms. We can store it in GitHub or GitLab. Great. Since we're also able to use Ansible not just for the automation, but for additional security aspects like we saw earlier with some SCAP reporting, we're getting to that MLS function of additional security bases. And then, since Ansible can deploy infrastructure, it can deploy platforms, containers, set up VXLANs, all sorts of different things, you can have it orchestrate the backbone of systems deployments, right? So that's where it gets really fun, that's where it gets really complicated. So before we get into the Rube Goldberg-y bit about how this all kind of mashes together, a couple things to be aware. I know most of us are security, operations side, infrastructure. We need some sort of Git source code management, right? So GitHub you might be using. GitLab is one of our vendors as well. Bitbucket from Atlassian, so on and so forth. You need something like that. Then you need a CI/CD engine. Ansible arguably can do CI/CD. Is its strength there? No, right? Use your tools that are strong in what they do. So you need a little CI/CD, a little DevOps pipeline. And then you need similar infrastructure from what you're going to test and build on and deploy, okay? Because here's the problem. I can set up a cloud infrastructure on AWS, which is great, and set OpenShift on top of it. But whenever I'm deploying to OpenShift in a little box this big, you'll come into some really interesting differences, right? So you need to have similar infrastructure. So something very important to keep in mind, homogeneous infrastructure as well. So now let's go through this play-by-play. Let's stack things up and see how it works in a workflow, all right? So we have a couple environments in our dev environment. Start there. We've got our container platform. You'll hear a little bit more about Red Hat's container platform later on. CI/CD pipeline, and your security automation practices. Great. And then we've got our test environment, which we're also running containers because that's hot stuff now. And in production, we're also running containers because, you know, we're masochists. And otherwise, we've got our security enclave. This is where you've got your Splunk with everything fun sitting, and this is where you've got Ansible Tower and all the other stuff that isn't living in anything that most people want to see, right? LDAP and all the other fun stuff. We're going to forget about those other three environments. We're going to focus on the development environment because here what we have is, again, OpenShift, and we've got CloudBees. CloudBees Jenkins is going to be running the CI/CD pipeline to build our applications and do a couple other steps. But again, it can't do everything, right? So we use Ansible to automate some of the other processes. You can kick back and forth very easily. And then we're also using Atomicorp to secure our infrastructure. Because guess what? If we're going to provision new infrastructure, we want to set that secure baseline. Again, what we're going to be running and delivering in production. And then don't forget we need something to store all this in. Okay, so we have GitLab here. You can use whatever you'd like otherwise. So how does this work in your organization in a workflow? You've got your rock star developer. He's just chugging Jolt energy drinks, checking stuff in, crushing life, right? And he's checking stuff into GitLab. And then what happens is CloudBees Jenkins goes, ooh, there's some new source code. I'm going to go do something with it. Now, CloudBees is going to go take this little source code and it's going to do some pulling in of dependencies, right? We're going to do a little bit of unit testing. We're going to start baking this application up. But again, it can't really handle provisioning infrastructure ad hoc on the level that we want. So we're going to kick things off into Ansible. So that's where we're going to use Ansible to spin up machines and clusters and platforms however we like. And what's great about Ansible is, guess what? It works in Amazon, it works in GCE, Azure, OpenStack, anywhere you'd like it. So we're spinning up our resources, and when we're spinning up our resources, we're setting our security baseline with those STIGs, SCAP STIGs, so on and so forth, and Atomicorp, because we want a more holistic security posture, right? Now we have Atomicorp setting up a new hub because we don't want to just plug things into the same hub. Because again, you run into the whole, I've got an expensive Splunk problem. So we're going to filter our data. We're going to do a little discount double check to make sure we're a little secure. Again, we're going to produce those reports. We're going to store them as artifacts back in GitHub, GitLab, and we're going to pass them off into our security team. Now we're also going to take those reports and start deploying our applications with Ansible. And what happens at the end is you've got a little automation soup going between CloudBees Jenkins, Ansible, and Atomicorp. All right, because it's important to automate. It's important to do this agile thing that everyone's talking about, but you need to do it in a secure way. And there's a lot, you can go down the rabbit hole on that one, talking about where you're getting your source code, your dependencies, all these other little bits from. You don't want to rely on the Node.js repository, right? That's you'd be asking for punishment there. But what happens with this, once you have this little trifecta of automation and security going, you come down to that golden goose we're all chasing for this secure software factory, right? It looks like that. What was Henry Ford's major contribution? It wasn't the car. It was the assembly line. It's that thing, right? And it took 13 and a half hours to produce one car, And it took that time down to, I think, like 3. Stark difference. So we want secure software factories, right? We want that same thing, because what happens is once we have this process down, we get that dopamine drip, we get that continuous compliance, and then we can go passing off bits to our security team, and you know what? Leave me alone. We've got this figured out. Ideally, you still have a little communication back and forth because it's a constant feedback cycle. But again, you get this nice little dopamine drip. All right. So we whizzed through that in a good little bit of amount of time. Questions, comments, concerns, qualms, queries, conundrums, threats, even. I like those the best. All right. Excellent. Well, thank you all for your time. Come check us out. We've got a lot going on.